Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting. We are going to continue reading Monsters and Magical Sticks. So let me share my. uh, Okay, where is it? How do we share it? There it is.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Today is April 21st, and we are going to continue reading Monsters and Magical Sticks. And this meeting is being recorded for anyone else who wants to watch the replays and everything. By being here, you're giving me the permission to be recorded, and it will be shared via YouTube on the level one or any other Utaptrix groups. And I'm not your mentor. I'm just here as your coach. And as we share our perspectives, our insights on whatever we're discussing, we are helping each other grow and learn and creating a good mutual space of learning. So, with that said, let's get started. So, we are on page 31 of Monsters and Magical Sticks, uh, Entrancing Tones. So whoever would like to read, you can raise your hand and start reading. Terry, can't hear you. There you
Sorry.
are. Thank you. No problem.
If we understand the word hypnosis to mean only a trance state, then our ability to recognize hypnotic transactions will be severely limited. If, however, we use the word hypnosis to imply any transaction in communication that causes an individual to go into their own experiences and call upon their own imagination in order to respond, we will have a map that will allow us to become aware of the hypnotic transactions occurring around us. In addition, if we begin to accept that these transactions can be triggered by not only words, but also visual cues or tones, people, and things, then our map will be even more helpful. A colleague and myself were training a psychiatric resident in the use of hypnosis. He brought us a videotape of his work with a schizophrenic. He told us that he was not only having trouble working with the patient, but that by the end of the session, he was a nervous wreck. As we watched his tape, I began to laugh, which upset him even more. I stopped the tape and pointed out that his patient was being very successful in hypnotizing him. I started the tape from the beginning and helped him to see what I meant. The patient was sitting in a way I can best describe as a pretzel. He was also talking word salad with many pauses between words. Within a few minutes, the resident was copying the patient, sitting in the same way, jumping from one idea to another, pausing between words, and then growing evidence of anxiety. Another way of describing their transaction would be as follows. The patient was using words, tones, and so-called body language, and the resident was responding like a perfect hypnotic subject. By becoming aware of what was happening, the resident was able to interrupt what the patient was doing and to begin to get the patient to follow him. A woman entered my office very depressed and upset. She told me that her husband had called her a fat pig. I thought it was unkind for him to have said that, but I also thought that there were more graceful ways for her to handle it rather than becoming so depressed. So I began to probe just how and when he had said it. It turned out that he had not used those words at all. She'd heard that tone of voice and knew just what he meant. People do not passively register the sentences uttered by a speaker. Instead, they hear what they expect to hear. They actively reconstruct both the sounds and syntax of the utterance in accordance with their expectations. Oh,
Awesome. Anything you would like to share, Sherry?
yeah, well, no wonder husbands and wives have such a hard time communicating. Everybody's coming from their own expectations, or anybody for that matter, I guess. But
I know. So true.
yeah.
Yes. Anyone
That,
else would like to share? Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
well, I was just thinking about how many times my husband will say, react to me, and I'll look at him and like, I didn't say that at all. And that's not what I meant, and that's not where I was going. And he was convinced. And now I realize that was from his own expectations, his own background, his own subconscious, whatever, whatever. So good to know that.
You know that, yes. Anyone else? Like to share anyone? Anything? Yeah, so true, right? And then also just not just the words are hypnotic, but just seeing somebody and it can put us in a hypnotic trance, like, or we can just remember, oh yeah, my aunt looked like that, or whatever. So just seeing or
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess I'm curious about like I've heard the definition of a meaning is defined by the receiver, not the transmitter. And certainly I have good intentions with some of my words, but my children, my family often respond as if, you're yelling. And it's like, no, I'm not actually. Um, and it's not what's inside of me that's my intention, but it is how they seem to receive it.
um, I like that. The meaning is defined by the receiver and not the transmitter.
The meaning of the communication. Yeah.
Meaning is the communication. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Randall. Anyone else would like to share anything on that? If not, we can read the next section to regress. Who would like to read? Anyone? Sherry, you're smiling.
Okay. Wait. I'm not sure how this will work, but we'll see. To regress. I ask her to close her eyes and remember that tone until you're feeling those feelings that let you know he's calling you a fat pig. When you have those feelings, signal me by raising the first finger of your left hand. After a minute or two, she signaled and said, now I see his face, looking just as it did then. While you hear that tone, now let his face fade away and be replaced by that other person who used that tone at some other time in your life, who used those words like fat pig. She was able to discover that her husband's tone when he was angry reminded her exactly of her father's tone of voice when he was angry. She also recalled that he, her father, actually called her mother a fat pig and told her she was getting to be just like her mother. So when she heard her husband's tone of voice, she disconnected from consensual reality, went into her inner reality, filled in words from out of the past, responded to those words as if they'd been said, and became depressed. All that based on what had happened many years before. Acheson cited in discussing psycholinguistics stated, it is not only a person's expectation of sound patterns that influences what she hears, but perhaps to an even greater extent, her expectation of syntactic and semantic patterns. When someone hears a sentence, she latches on to outline clues and jumps to conclusions about what she's hearing. Is that it? You want me to keep going?
Yeah, it's up to you, Sherry. However long you would like to read. You can just read the section if
Okay.
you would like.
In my breath, I'll do one more
Okay.
paragraph. Okay. Now let us examine one hypnotic phenomenon called regression. Okay. A hypnotist will use words suggestions designed to cause the subject to go back in time in order to re-experience some past event or to examine some past events. Where this regression is successful, the subject will react, at least emotionally, as if the past event is happening in the present. If we examine the transaction between the woman and her husband and what occurred as a result of his quote unquote tone of voice, it would match the definition of a hypnotic regression. Of course, the woman was not in a trance, or was she? She began to stare straight ahead. As she really got into her story, I observed that her eyes had dilated, her breathing and color had changed, and her eyes had become glazed. When I slowly moved my hand across her line of vision, she didn't even see it. Any person who'd been trained in the basics of hypnotic phenomena would have been able to see that she was in a trance, If her mere retelling of what had happened produced a hypnotic state, we can wonder what the incident itself might have produced. In the real world of everyday life, hypnotic communications and transactions take place all around you. As you open yourself up to many possibilities, I'm sure you'll begin to see more of them. What of the parent who gives a small child a dirty look and says, "You better clean up your room or else," and then walks away, leaving the child to wonder, "Or else what? The Jolly Jean Giant will throw me away." The child then becomes anxious, agitated, and then waits for disaster. What if the child who is told, "What is the matter with you? Can't you do anything right?" And the child begins to think, "I can't do anything right," turning the question into a directive. So he may even come to believe that mommy and daddy would be pleased if he doesn't do anything right. If the child begins to carry out the suggestions often enough, well, I don't need to tell you what those results could be. Wow, we're pretty screwed up as humans. Because I'm sorry, I'm sort of recovering from bronchitis, but it's okay. So I think a lot of times my husband had a dirty look that could just literally rip your heart out. And so with our kids, all he had to do was look at them, and then they imagined all sorts of things. None of it ever was really, he just wanted them to stop what they were doing. And I think a lot of that is what happens. You see a dirty look, or you hear a tone of voice, or you hear the level of something, and you immediately associate with someone else, whether it actually happened from that person or from another event. And Robert talks a lot about being in trances all the time, and yeah, I guess we really are. A lot of times when you're walking around, when you're ironing like I'm doing today, and you're just talking about life to whomever's in the room, which is no one, then you're probably in some kind of trance. Like, I remember ironing before. Why? I hate ironing. Why did I buy these stupid clothes? So I think we go into these trances with things, past events or events that can occur brand new, and then we relate them to something else. This was interesting. Okay, I'm out.
Oh, I hope you feel better soon, Sherry. Yes. But speaking of
I do feel
ironing,
better. Okay.
that's good. Yes, I'm so glad. Speaking of ironing, like you were saying, I guess the whole thing was designed so that, we don't have to think about how to iron every time we iron. It's like we go into the hypnotic trance of ironing, we just know. But then, the problem comes when we're just recycling the old looks, the bad looks, the words, or just making up words to mean something else than their meaning because we just go into the trance of the past and we're not being productive anymore. So yeah, going into the trance is a natural thing. Just depends what track we choose to or are habitual of going. And so that's why we're changing the memories and creating better trances. Yeah, so it's so interesting. Who would like to read, or anybody else would like to share anything on this? Any other insights? Hey, Sherry.
Yeah, it made me think of the connecting the subconscious. When you say to a child, "What's wrong with you?" the subconscious has got to answer that. So it looks, well, this is wrong with me. I mean, how often, or when even not as a child, but somebody says, "What's wrong with you?" Your subconscious is built to answer that and bring those up to the forefront. So it's important to be, I guess, aware of that at all times.
So true, because yeah, the unconscious is just follows orders. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? So it's gonna go look for everything that's wrong with us.
Mhm.
And so it's like the quality of our life is the quality of questions we ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Oh my gosh, for sure. Anyone else like to share anything on that? If not, who would like to read the next section? Hypnosis and life scripts. All right. Sorry? Thank you.
Yeah. TA, transactional analysis, therapists follow a concept they call life scripts. They believe that individuals are given a script to follow that, if painful and not changed, will cause an individual to act in ways that are self-defeating. You can't drink, kid. You can't drink until you are a man. That kind of message translates unconsciously: to be a man, I have to drink. Here's an implantation of a suggestion, and yeah, implantation of a suggestion that may take firm hold that the individual ends up an alcoholic. In fact, the TA people contend that this is not an uncommon thing. Another way to look at this example would be the words cause the individual to fill in its own meaning. This meaning became a post-hypnotic suggestion, which he later carries out successfully by being a drunk. One case reported by a therapist was a homosexual who was, as a young boy, had been told, "Don't you ever do that," that being caught playing doctor with girls. He was then beaten with a strap. The boy translated this translation as, "It's bad to do this with girls, but it's okay to do this with boys." Years later, he's labeled a homosexual as a good hypnotic subject. I would like to say that I see the thing with the drunks, that makes sense. But I guess that's my personal opinion, but if you're gay, you're gay. I feel like that's a little weird of a statement for the book to be making. Like,
See, it's not always the case. You never know, right? And
yeah,
some, hmm
yeah,
yeah.
I guess. I like the alcohol one, this other one. Okay. In
I hear
another
ya.
in the above examples of alcoholic and homosexual, we can find something important to consider. As a result of what all hypnotic transactions, those individuals learn to believe certain ideas. From their ideas, they learn to behave in ways that some would think label painful. Before we go forward, I would like to take you back to our friend, the waiter. Several months after the incident I described, I returned to the restaurant with several friends. As fate would have it, we were given the table in his section. When he came in to get our order, he stopped and stared and said, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" I replied, "I came here often in the past." He accepted the explanation and went about his business. I explained to my friends what I had done to him in the past. We all agreed that he was a friendly and cheerful person. Towards the end of their meal, he came by and asked if we wanted anything else. Several of us ordered coffee, returned holding the coffee pot, stopped and stared and smiled. "Now I know who you are. I still don't know how you knew all of that." With all that, he sat down in an empty chair and began to tell us how he reminded him of a certain girl, and now they are engaged. He finished. After he finished, I attempted to explain to him what I'd done, but he wouldn't believe it. He continued to insist that he had the inside information, or I had the inside information. Remember now what I talked when I had talked funny to him. He was holding a coffee pot in his hands. Part of what I said involved the feeling of warmth. In a way I could never predicted, his mind would make an instant connection to the coffee pot, the incident, the feelings, and me. In short, the one trial learning experiencing me only triggered a part of the experience. The coffee pot triggered the whole thing. We could call the transaction a learning experience. It may have been a weird one, but a learning experience nonetheless. As a point of the fact, many hypnosis researchers contend that all learning takes place in a state that is very much hypnotic. Some would even say that learning and hypnosis are nearly two different words that describe the same thing.
Interesting. Anything else you would like to share on that, Torian?
Um, yeah, I agree that, like, if you put something in someone's head and years later they can take that differently. I've
Mhm.
definitely had experiences where I've filled in the blanks before and it's taken years to unfill the blanks, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I kind of like what he said, that learning and hypnosis might be the same thing, just different words. It's like, whatever we learn is actually hypnosis.
Yeah.
So
And isn't it,
Oh, that makes sense why that was in there. The first edition was in 1987.
Yes. Yeah, I
That
was
makes
looking
a
it up
hell of a
too.
lot more sense. Okay, I was like this. Okay,
It was
I'll
87,
accept
yeah.
the old lady.
Yeah.
I was just like, if this book was written like last year, I'm done.
Yes. Yeah,
What
definitely.
age are we
Okay,
in?
that makes more sense because it definitely was a behavior back then that was seen as uncommon and everything. So I can see that. Okay, that made me feel a lot better to check the publishing date.
Thank you. While you were reading, I was looking at it too, certainly.
I was like,
Yeah. Yes. Anyone else?
What page are we on?
Sure. Hey, Sasha, we are on page 35. She just read the section Hypnosis and Life Scripts.
just a quick comment on the learning and hypnosis can be used interchangeably. It made me think of little children. When they're learning the most, they're in to the age of 6 or 7, they're in a hypnotic state and they learn more those years. And so I just made that connection, like, oh, that makes sense.
True, I know. Yeah. They are in a very hypnotically receptive stage. Yes. Yeah. Anyone else would like to share anything on that? Okay. We can get along to the next section. 2 plus 2 is equal to hypnosis. Anyone would like to read? Florian, did you say something? Would you like to read?
I said, if no one else, I can go again.
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, I was like, 2 plus 2 equals kenosis. Now if someone were to ask you to add 2 plus 2, I am confident that you would respond with the correct answer. If you were asked how you knew the answer, you might reply that you learned as a child. In other words, the question itself causes you to go back to your personal history and find the proper connection. You would have done that instantly without conscious awareness of the process. Another way of stating the 2 plus 2 example would be might as follows. When you were a child, an individual who was an authority figure called a teacher stood in front of your class. She wrote on a blackboard 2 plus 2 equals 4 and verbally repeated that information many times. In addition, she asked the class to remember the answer so that when you were asked to add 2 plus 2, you'd be automatically responding 4. We might agree that the above transaction could give you the labels of teaching and learnings. If we examine the transaction more carefully and from a different perspective, we've also agreed that it bears a striking resemblance to the classical definition of hypnotic suggestion and post-hypnotic response. Now, think of the waiter and his coffee pot and his response. It is as if the pot of coffee had become the trigger, just like the question 2 plus 2, which caused him to go back to his personal history and find the answer. In his case, the answer was to respond to me with a full memory, etc. Now, speaking the state of hypnosis, a volunteer brought up on stage and put into that state and told repeatedly that when she hears the snapping of hypnosis figures, she will respond by singing Dixie. The hypnosis then snaps his fingers and responds with the right answer by singing Dixie. If subject responds with it by the right answer, singing Dixie. Ask yourself now, other than the shorter time factor involved, what is the difference between learning 2 plus 2 equals 4 and the transaction between the stage hypnosis and the subject? The stage hypnosis now chooses another volunteer and suggests when your red light is turned on, the subject will raise your left hand. Several minutes later, hypnosis turns on the red light and subject raises your left hand. So what? We could call that an example of a post hypnotic suggestion. You were driving down a busy street listening to the radio and deep in your own thoughts. Suddenly, your traffic light turns red, and guess what? You stop, hopefully, without the thought and almost automatically. You might call your action condition response, and you might contend that it is different from the stage hypnosis red light example. Yet, if the red light hand raising suggestion and response were repeated several times, you might imagine what the subject would do whenever she saw a red light. In addition to the definitions of hypnotic transactions in communication you have read thus far, I would like to add hypnosis is a form of education. Ideas, beliefs, possibilities, and fantasies are much more may be suggested. And if accepted and acted upon several times, they may be a conditioned part of your behavior. In addition, under certain circumstances and conditions, a conditioned response can be established in one trial without repetition and without practice. Again, think about the waiter. We have never practiced his response or my suggestion, and yet months later he responded. And it is my belief that all behaviors are useful or not are learned via some kind of hypnotic transaction.
So interesting. Anything you would like to share, Torian?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what they said with teaching is technically a hypnotic thing. But I think that also begs the question, at what point do we choose to start learning versus is it being a hypnosis sort of thing? Because I could see when like the 2 + 2 = 4, kindergarten, hell yeah, that was hypnosis. But like in like college level courses, I feel like it's not like them spitting it out and you repeating. It's more of a them spitting it out and you have to complex figure out things versus that information. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting.
right. It's interesting. You wonder. Hey, Sherry.
Yeah, and that sort of explains to me now that when I was teaching my students to use positive reinforcement as a behavior technique in classes, and I was always like, wow, that really works. I mean, I would even do it with my own kids and said, oh, gee, okay. And now a lot of that is hypnosis because all at once they're doing a response and they're remembering or that good, that was a great job, or look, you got an A, something that was a positive thing rather than, God, you're stupid. Why can't you get that? So maybe that is a form of hypnosis as well, so that when you are behaving, instead of choosing to be the jerk of the day or continually calling out, you just are quiet. And then your teacher quietly comes by and says, you did a great job today. So you still have that. Yeah, I guess I don't know if that would be hypnosis, though. I'd have to rethink on that one a minute.
Think sure is in some ways. Yeah.
Some levels. Interesting. I mean, I know that when you learn how to play the piano, when you learn how to sing, when you learn how to sight read, that's all hypnosis because it just comes so automatically after introducing this subject, practicing this subject, and then it's just all the time. And Tarian's right, because in college it is different. You don't have a set pattern that you're just taking as a sponge and learning. If you do learn a new concept, you either have to write about it or think about it or do it or just forget about it and pass the test. It's not something that's going to be with you forever for that. That's and I had to, when the midst education, my horns went up and I didn't know if I was going to throw this book through the wall or keep going, but it's okay. It's okay. I can see how he would
Yeah.
equate that, especially at a younger age, because we do things so automatically, just reading, trying to do numbers, which is exciting. That's why we have computers now. But all those things are just, part of hypnosis.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. What it made me think was like perhaps like any like repetitive thing we do, like even just learning 2 + 2 at a young age as a repetition. It's like a hypnosis, just you become but then like as an adult learning something, what I am seeing is like how we learn something, that could be like a hypnosis because, you know, our sometimes the intention behind learning can become uh, uh, a seeking praise seeking. So we get into that hypnosis of like why we are learning something or try to prove, or if you're just learning it for the self-learning, for that is there an intrinsic motivation, or is the motivation extrinsic? If it's extrinsic, there's a hypnosis of it, of like, perhaps, what is the motivation there? That, there could be a hypnosis behind it, which is a past memory, a past trance we're going into. I don't know. So it's interesting learning. Anyone else would like to share anything? Hey, Sasha. Jerry.
Well, that last sentence there, I really need to contemplate because it says that my belief is that all behaviors, useful or not, are learned by some kind of hypnotic transaction. So it just, I really want to think on that because, I've got some non-useful behaviors in my life. And it just kind of puts a little different twist on them to think, well, I learned that in hypnotic state. So what do I want to do about that? I don't know. It's just something that's a pretty deep statement to me. It's hitting me that way. So I really want to think on that. It's almost like a tool to get rid of that not useful behavior.
Yeah.
It's almost like when
Right.
you learn something hypnotically, you kind of lose your choice in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
No.
So like what that brought to me was the E-Baba, right? Behaviors, actions, um, beliefs, and what's the fourth one? Um, actions and why am I skipping one?
Emotions,
It's emotions, yes. Then you got beliefs,
attitude,
actions,
attitude,
behaviors, attitudes,
attitude.
yes. Yeah,
Yes.
they're all hypnosis. All of them are hypnosis, right? So not just the behaviors, but our attitudes, our actions, our beliefs, and behaviors. They're all learned,
Mhm,
right? And they're all coming from the past memory.
mhm. Hmm.
Hey, Christina,
Yes,
would you like to share?
I would like to say something.
Yes.
For everyday life, for example, I do many different things in the same way every day. For example, I open my door with the left hand. I put the key always in the same place. I put everything in the house in the same place, like every day. So it's easy to find, but sometimes it's something disturbed or other people or circumstances. I'm getting angry in the same like to interact with other people. When other people do differently than we expect, it's also difficult to accept the differences of other people. But uh, sometimes I tap when something bothers me, so it's become more normal. So another time I accept this situation, even this is different.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good example for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So, those behaviors of opening the door, putting the key, so that's what like hypnosis is meant for. So it makes our life
Mhm.
easier so we don't have to like think about every time where we put our
Yes,
key.
we can do many things in the same time,
Hmm.
even.
Right. But then also like the behavior of like getting angry at seeing somebody, that's a learned behavior, right? We've done it, we have learned it from somebody. Um, so there are some useful behaviors, useful beliefs, useful attitudes, useful actions, and there are some that are not useful. And so when we notice the ones that are not useful, we can tap on it. We can go back to the past, to the where we learned it, and as we change it, we are changing it for our future. So we have a better resource now. So we can act from a better place, have a better action, better attitude, better behavior, because all the behaviors are learned. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And as also we're watching somebody else behaving a certain way, we can just like, okay, they just learned it. They just learned it from somewhere. They're just in the hypnosis of, of learning it from wherever they learned, but our behaviors are not us. And that was one of the points in the healing attitudes in the level 1 manual that we were reading. We are not our behaviors, our actions, etc. Yeah. Sherry, does that answer your question in a way, or does that kind of make sense?
Which Sherry?
You were
Me.
saying something, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's still, just kind of opening my mind to a broader definition of hypnosis, because I came into reading this book and into Pastor EFT with a very narrow view of hypnosis. I thought it was just that stage thing that somebody controlled you with. And so I'm still opening up and trying to assimilate this really valuable information, and that does help. Yeah.
Definitely. In the same way as we do future pace in our sessions, that is putting the person in that hypnosis of a new learned behavior and how to continue that into the future. Like we change the memory, we change our attitudes and behaviors, and then we give them a suggestion on see yourself in the future of your life. There you are doing all these cool things and behaving a certain way and putting the key in the right place, opening the door with the left hand. And then that goes in our subconscious mind. And next time we're there, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this is where I put my key,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very useful. I think we need to really grasp the usefulness of this. Like Krishna was saying, just to have everything in order. That's a really good thing. And not have to think. I mean, before I get in bed, I just brush my teeth. I don't think about it. And it's the more of those positive things I do without thinking about it, the better. So take some of the negative behaviors I have and switch them over. I think of it in the terms of hypnosis to something positive, because we really want, the more we have of those, the easier our days are. So
Might we say habits are a hypnosis?
yeah, exactly.
To learned behaviors, a hypnosis, yes. Anyone else would like to have any insight or share any insights on that? Hey, Torian.
Hi. Yeah, no, it just made me kind of, I don't know, through everybody talking. Because when my mom had cancer, I was 10. So I was there, but like I was not there making my real decisions yet because my brain hadn't developed. Because to protect little me, I guess hypnotized myself into being like, okay, well, mom's dead already. Move on. Uh, and that's really sad because it took me like I mean, clearly she's alive, but most even better. But it took me until I was like 17 to like for my brain to let go of like mom's dead. Like clearly she was right in front of me, but it was like I don't know, there was like a defense mechanism of like, okay, well if I already killed her off in my mind, she can't hurt me. It clearly didn't work, but it was interesting of like seeing like so will someone else suggested or like ideas and beliefs. It was just like I hypnotized myself and it was just really interesting to like watch our relationship grow since I've unhypnotized myself. I don't know. I just thought that was really interesting.
It's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting how we can do that to protect ourselves. Yes. Yeah, so like I guess not being in the present moment and stepping into an alternative reality is what hypnosis is. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Torian. Yeah. Anyone else would like to share anything on that?
Um, me. I think just listening to everybody, it's like on the one hand, it's kind of like scary how much you can lose control of how you want to navigate your life, right? But at the same time, once you're aware of it, like it seems like a very empowering thing, right? Because it's like the whole idea of, oh, I can't control this, or, oh, I can't stop this is just an idea that you're like trying to convince yourself of, but it's an idea that you are convinced, like you're the active agent there convincing yourself of that. Therefore, you're the active agent that could decide to do something else and take your life in another direction. And so there's like a sense of I don't know, hope and freedom in the idea that yes, you were unaware of that, but now that you are aware of that, where do you want to take yourself? You know what I mean? Because it's possible, and it's only a sense of giving yourself the amount of time to get there. So it's not a question of whether you're going to get there. It's a question of, you know, when will I get there? Kind of, once you put in the work to it, you put your attention and focus into that where it is that you want to go. And I kind of find that as nice, nice to know that, you're not powerless. Nice to know that, you're not at the mercy of everything, that at one point you could decide to take yourself somewhere and it's verifiable. You can do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. Yeah, it's like choosing the hypnosis that we decide to stay in, choosing our trances, just and then I think the what where it starts is by first noticing the trance that we are in. Because if we are in the trance, we won't be able to notice it. And then we can't say no to it. It's like, oh, I choose to not be in it. So it's like first becoming self-aware of our behaviors and actions and attitudes and beliefs that are coming out of our trance. And just also knowing everything is a trance. So it's like, okay. Yeah. Choosing to step out of it and then choosing a better trance, perhaps. Yeah, because the brain is going to go automatically into a trance. So,
Yeah, which one do you choose?
which
The
one do
point
we
is
choose? Yeah.
choose. Mm.
Yes, choosing is the word. So yeah,
That
this
that actually gives me like a really good example of I've seen this personally in my life, and I'd like to preference this to the people that do know my mother. She had no idea about this. Well, at the time, she's not a bad mom. Um, so I am about to celebrate 10 years sober off of heroin because I was using when I was younger. Again, parents had no idea. They're great parents. But I remember it was right after I was done with high school and I was still using, and me and my friend decided to quit. And she was in the trance of I need to quit, I'm gonna die, or like I need to quit, like it just like it was a lot of negative, like I need to quit because of negative reasons. And like that was her trance. She eventually ended up um overdosing. But but that's when she started using again. And I really do believe it was because her trance was, I'm doing this for all, which they were technically positive reasons, not wanting to die, but the way she was phrasing it, it was like you could tell she was in trance of like severe, like not even survival mode. It was just like it was negativity. And then I was in the trance of, because like you said, not all trance, like you can change your trance. I had to put myself in a trance of, if you don't do this, you're not getting out of this shithole town. You are not going to college. and you're gonna get stuck here like every other adult you've ever met here. And I'm like, and that was like, it was more of a, you're going to college. You're going to college. You're not doing this in college. You're not going to be that person. And it was just interesting to see, like, because I could see both of us struggling and everything, but the fact that mine was positive and mine was like going towards a goal, not just trying to stay stasis and everything. It just, I could see the power of like the trance really helped. Like, and it was just really interesting to watch, like, the difference between like how it changed both of us. So of course we're different people, but it's just, it was interesting to watch. I don't know. Sorry. That was kind of deep. Sorry, guys.
No, it's really very interesting, Yes, the words we are using, it's like, or I'm gonna die, I don't want to die. So that's what the brain is hearing, and you were perhaps visualizing, and visualizing not just seeing, but also like, hearing, feeling. You want to go to college. I want to go to college. I want to go to college, so I want to quit, you know? So that's what you were seeing, perhaps.
I feel like I was seeing like the positive things with like like I would look forward to, like, I was doing future pacing before I even knew what it was.
Awesome.
I was like looking for, I think she was just looking forward to surviving the next day. And my thoughts were, I was seeing that diploma hit my hand. I was seeing me hit my first job. Like, it was just like, I will get, this is not my life. And hers was more of a, I don't want this to be my life, but I just need to change this one little thing. Mine was like, everything needs to change. We're going. It was just interesting to see like the different states we were in and everything.
Yeah, so you hypnotized yourself into a better future.
Basically.
Yeah, it's like
which is,
that one
it worked
became,
for me.
yeah, definitely. That one became more compelling to you. It's like, this is, I'm not that anymore. You changed your identity. If you're visualizing holding the diploma, having the diploma hit your hand while she's in the hypnosis of, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, so she's like, so words we use on ourselves and what we're seeing inside is that hypnosis of it. And so it's so important to visualize what we want instead of what we don't want. Like we
Yeah.
read in the level 1 book, The Power of Don't Want.
Oh yeah, that was a huge thing too.
Yeah.
And I was just, I don't know. Maybe think about that. Please don't mention to my mother. Thank you guys.
No. Yeah, so it's like so important what we are doing inside of our heads. Thank you so much, Torian. Yes. All right. Anyone else would like to share anything else? Not. Anybody else would like to read the next section? Okay, Sherry, go for it. Case 1.
Case 1, self-destructive. A bright and talented young man was referred to me with the presenting problem of, quote unquote, always blowing his opportunities. Oh, well, okay. Prior to seeing me, he had been in formal therapy for 2 years, searching for the answer to his problem. His problem had been labeled as characterological disorder. He had also been told that he had tendencies toward sociopathy and self-destruction. Actually, he talked more like a psychiatrist than a patient. He had completed 1 full year of college with a 4.0 average. He had attempted to complete the second year 3 times, but due to his dismal performance, he had been forced to drop out each time. Due to his obvious talents and intelligence, he had been hired by several companies in various management training capacities. This in spite of his not having completed college. However, each time he was given a promotion or his position was to be made permanent, he would go on a drunk, miss work, and end up getting fired. In one instance, he had gone so far as to attack and injure his immediate superior. This young man had been, raised within a strict European-style environment in which the father was the unquestioned head of the family. He was very afraid of his parents, and as a child, like most children, he believed they knew everything. As a student in the American system, he was encouraged to ask questions. Whenever he questioned his father on any subject, he would be met with a verbal assault. And in many cases, he would be punished. While in a formal state of hypnosis, whatever that is, he recovered a very clear visual image. He saw his mother standing over him, pointing a finger at him and screaming. He was then able to hear her words, "Don't you ever try to be better than your father." Wow. He was able to recall his feelings of terror and impending doom. The fact that his father was a retired mailman who had never attended college is probably not very important. Since there's no such thing as hypnosis, it is just a coincidence that every time he was about to go beyond his father, something happened which stopped him from being better than his father. He was a very good boy. He was merely doing what his mother had told him. Let us assume that part of our young man recognizes his talents and potential and wants to use them, while another part of him says, "What are you trying to do, guy? Be better than your father and lose your mother's love?" or whatever. This conflict could produce a classical approach, avoidance conflict. The closer he gets to becoming successful, the closer he gets to being better than his father. The more he runs into past suggestions and their attendant fears. The further he runs from using his talents and abilities, the more his stressful part starts pushing him. The results are stress, pain, fear, and repeated failure, no matter which way he turns. Of course, since his mother did not use a crystal ball to put him into a trance, no hypnosis was involved. Really? Okay. Well, that was just a adorable story. I mean, it was wow. That's when you want to go smack that woman and say, "What's wrong with you?" Um, that's interesting. When I first started reading, I kept thinking, "Oh, now why didn't he not want to do it?" You know, I thought maybe his parents were. I didn't realize his dad was a mail. I mean, I grew up. I was a mailman. You know, it was about that. You know, just a mailman, and he wanted him to do more. So then he just couldn't do more because of his mom. I mean, and I wonder if she realized when she said that what she was doing. You know, I don't know.
Right.
Or maybe she was
Yeah.
just so frustrated with him and his dad. I mean, you know, who knows? But it had a great effect on him and has kind of screwed up his life for a minute. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mom was in her own trance.
He did go into a trance. He did go into a trance. Every time he started to do really well, it was like, whoa, mama. No, and stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And perhaps it was not like he was thinking every time, "Oh, mom told me don't be better." He was just in the trance. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah. Hey, Sherry.
As I was listening to the first part of this before we got down to the last half of it, I thought, oh, Robert would just go in and find the memory that brought this in.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then sure enough, there it was, his mother, you know. He would just go zero right in on that and change that. Then he would be free to soar and, you know, go beyond his father. But that's, you know, just looking at it from that other, oh, all we have to do is go into that trance. I mean, think about that when you're helping people or doing sessions or being worked on. So go
Mhm.
into that trance and change that.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, in a way, finding that memory helped him step out of the trance
Yes.
because before he didn't know what he was really doing. As soon as they pinpointed that memory, he was able to step out and then he can make a decision. And changing the memory is even better because that automatically puts him in a better trance. And then he's able to act from that, you know. And then we can also just choose like every time we notice, "Oh yeah, I'm doing that again." I don't have to be in that trance again. I don't have to, I can choose to be, choose to do it, choose to do what's right for me or, you know, what I'm inspired to do. But I feel like changing the memory also like gives us a permission in a beautiful way, it's like inspires us in a beautiful way, moves us towards that.
Because when we're in those trances, we don't think of questioning them. I mean, you know, if he hadn't been in a trance, he could have well, Mom, let's discuss this. Why don't you want me to be better than Dad? But you don't because you're in a trance.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So cool. Anyone else like to share anything on that? Any other insights, examples? I was just thinking how when Sherry was reading, how many of us went inside of ourselves, made up pictures of mom standing over the boy, telling him that. And then, as we were discussing in the previous section, all learning is a hypnosis, right? And just going inside, bringing our own resources up, so much easier to learn when we are seeing it in our head. We are hearing mom say that instead of just reading the words. And so we are putting ourselves in a hypnosis and we are learning. So all learning is hypnosis, even though we are going to college, we are choosing to, but how we learn is hypnosis. It makes it easier for us. We are creating a trance like, oh, I'm watching the mom say something. I'm hearing those words. I'm feeling those feelings. So we are like learning that, right? So we just want to watch out which trances, we don't want to make it ours. Like Robert says, you hear something, just go in your head. Yeah, we watch movies, we are going into a hypnosis. We don't want to keep what we don't want to keep. Even if it's not ours, we can learn from TV, we can learn from reading, so we want to keep what's useful for us. Yeah. Don't make up pictures inside your head of things you don't want. But yeah, we all do. That's how we learn. We just read something, we make up pictures. But anyway, anybody would like to read the next section? Anxiety and hypnosis.
I could read it.
Go for it, Sasha.
Hopefully I'm on the right page. Okay.
38.
Yeah, it's different. It's different in my book.
Okay.
Okay. Anxiety and hypnosis. Now let us go back to our metaphoric stage hypnotist. Are we on the same page?
Yes.
Okay, great. We could imagine him giving the following suggestion. When I pull on my tie just once, you will raise your left hand. When I pull on my tie twice, you will lower your left hand. We could define this transaction as the giving of a post-hypnotic suggestion to be triggered by a specific visual cue, the pulling of the tie. A man walks into a party and sees a woman looking at him in a funny way. His heart begins to pound, his stomach knots, his palms begin to sweat, he panics and hurriedly walks out of the party saying to himself, I can't handle this, whatever this is to him. If we step back and examine that transaction, we could conclude that something he saw in her face triggered his responses. In effect, the way she was looking at him acted as if a visual cue that triggered his response, just like the stage hypnotist pulling on his tie. His response may, in fact, have little or nothing to do with the reality of the situation. The woman may even have difficulty with her eyes and was looking at him in that way because she was having trouble seeing him. Mr. Max Hamilton, 1955, addresses this subject in relationship to anxiety states when he stated, thus the patient suffering from an anxiety state may not be able to describe the situation that provokes the anxiety. It may appear to him that his anxiety is without cause. This awareness of the relation of past experience to present experience is fundamental, for it implies that every conscious experience is modified by past experience. Example, the actual event of experiencing is partly determined by past experience. This is equivalent to saying that no emotion is twice experienced in exactly the same way. Thus, all behavior, including its emotional aspect, is learned behavior. It is my firm belief that our problems and limitations, as well as our successful attitudes and behaviors, are the result of some form of hypnotic transaction communication. In the clinical hypnosis innovative techniques training seminars, I have demonstrated that so-called hypnotic phenomena can be produced not only via words, but through facial expressions, body postures, certain tonalities, and by merely staring. These experiences have led me to conclude that hypnosis is a method of communication which need not be limited to words alone, but rather it may take a multitude of forms.
So cool.
Yeah, fun
Like
times.
yeah. You have anything you would like to share, Sasha?
I mean, being a recovering social anxious person, and having my ass handed to me in a lot of situations, I feel because of it. Yeah, I could definitely see how trying to step away from that and feeling better about myself, I've actually had to be aware of those conditionings that I put upon myself, right? Like that meaning that I give to these external things to create a story that produces anxiety within me. um so I've had a lot of experience with this scenario. And also a lot of experience just calling myself out on it, just being aware of what I'm telling myself and diffracting or just like taking my attention somewhere else and de-escalating the situation, I guess you could say.
Definitely. Thank you. Yes. That's very interesting. What I'm seeing is like, that, just like you said, being in the social situation, the anxiety and all that. But once you were able to get out of it, no, then you just notice it. And when you tap and we pull ourselves out of the trance as we're doing in your taptics, it's like, it's, we notice it and then we tap and we step out of the trance. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's helped me a lot, especially like the visual. I mean, because like I'm at a dinner and I can't. I mean, I'm sure somebody can, but I guess I'm too self-conscious about just like going like this to my face, in front of complete strangers. But visually, I do visualize the sensation of what it feels like to have like my fingers here, and stuff like that. And I've noticed how that like really just helps me to enjoy the experience more, because I'm not freaking out or overthinking and stuff like that.
You. Definitely. Anyone else would like to share anything on this?
I guess
Terry?
what helps me is thinking, I'll stay in the now, get out of your head and come back to look at what's going on around you right now, get into the now. Because I mean, my mind goes off into daydreaming and imagination and this and that. And I don't even know what's happening around me. So just using that phrase, stay in the now, was kind of a new concept coming into Master EFT. Like, oh, I didn't know I wasn't. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, but like, we think we're in the now, but we're in the now and watching everyone and getting triggered by it. But, knowing that we're not in the now, we're connecting this to something else in the past, which is a hypnosis of the past. So it's very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else has anything else to share? This was really awesome. Thank you all. It's already over. It's like I want to just continue reading. It's so fun. But let's get back together next week and continue with I can't and I won't. I think that's a very, very good one. I can't and I won't is really good. So thank you so much. And I will see you next week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great week. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye. What happened?